Today we're going to go over a few moments in the Metal Gear series that make you swear you're playing a horror game. Grab your favorite Halloween candy and let's get into it. We're going to start off a little light before we get into the heavier stuff. The Ghost Photography and Dead Man's Treasure missions are by far the scariest missions found within Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. Ghost Photography tasks Snake or his MSF soldiers with taking a picture of a ghost wandering around specific maps. These missions are the spiritual successors, no pun intended, to the original Ghost Photography players can perform within Metal Gear Solid 1, Metal Gear Solid 2, and even Metal Gear Solid 3. Peace Walker kicks up the creepiness quite a bit by making use of ominous music and setting the tone right from the mission description. This is a one-on-one encounter with the paranormal. Not only do you need to find the ghost using no more than your surround indicator and your own two eyes, or one eye I guess, but your supporting cast offers no help here. To top it off, if the ghost finds you before you find it, it's game over. The Dead Man's Treasure missions, on the other hand, force you to interact with the dying bodies of soldiers in order to force their spirits back into their bodies so you can traverse to the mission objective without being grabbed by a ghost. The same ominous music from the Ghost Photography missions is playing, but the fact that you have to get up close and personal with the ghost definitely amplifies the scare factor here. You won't get a game over if you're caught, but you might actually wish for a game over screen instead of this. This reminds me so much of the Re-Dead and Legend of Zelda, which also terrified me as a kid, or even something more recent, the BTs in Death Stranding. Once again, no support via codec is given in these missions either. However, if you use the codec over and over again, you may receive a message from someone beyond the grave. While neither of these missions can be classified as terrifying, I do think they deserve a spot on this list for how well they managed to create a feeling of unease and even instill some legitimate fear into players as they tackle these extra ops missions. One of the most well-designed boss fights in terms of music, sound design, and the way the fight unfolds also happens to be one of the most terrifying bosses across the entire series. I'm talking, of course, about Laughing Octopus. The cutscene that plays before her actual boss encounter sets the tone perfectly. We follow Old Snake down a narrow corridor sensing someone or something's presence, but he is unable to make out where exactly this feeling originates from. It isn't until Laughing Octopus literally plops herself onto the ground that both Snake and the player know what we're dealing with. And even then, since Octopus is the first B&B core member we come across, we're not really sure what's going on. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen Snake as confused and as disgusted as he is in this cutscene. Apart from the disembodied laughter and voices, what really caught me off guard was Laughing Octopus dropping an F-bomb, one of the very few F-bombs in the entire series. This all leads to one of the best cutscene to gameplay transitions ever. The actual boss fight complements the cutscene and the overall tone of this encounter perfectly. Literally, as soon as you are given control of Old Snake, Laughing Octopus whips out a P90 and starts spraying into you with absolutely no remorse. This is a clever way to encourage players to take cover, allowing Octopus to slip away and truly commence the terror that is this boss fight. What makes this boss fight so special and so scary is the role reversal that's happening here that rarely happens to Snake. The hunter is suddenly the hunted. Employing theatricality and deception to confuse and incapacitate enemies is usually what Snake does. This time around, it's being used against him, all while the distorted and warped sounds of people laughing play all around you. The music is also a great source of unease. It hits its crescendo and then suddenly subsides, giving you hope that things are calming down and that you'll have a moment to breathe. This, of course, couldn't be further from the truth. Laughing Octopus is simply waiting for you to stumble into her trap, taunting you as you wander around the room confused. Either you find her first, or she'll make you pay. Eventually, she'll even use mimicry to try and bait you into a portion of the room that she's booby-trapped. It's this feeling of uncertainty that really takes this fight to the next level. You can't trust your senses. You do not know whether the next room is completely booby-trapped from corner to corner. You can't even trust what looks and sounds like an ally. Snake, and by extension the player, is disoriented, confused, and unsure of what to do next. This is a terrifying position to be in, even for a soldier as legendary as Solid Snake. Chances are, if you're anything like me, this cutscene left a lasting impression on you as a kid. I'm talking, of course, of the bloody hallway scene before the Cyborg Ninja or Gray Fox boss fight. It's not like this is the first time we've seen Gray Fox do something completely savage, yet this moment is probably the scariest moment in all of Metal Gear Solid 1. You're greeted to a hallway full of cut-up bodies as the camera quickly flashes between different depictions of the carnage laying just ahead. You're given control of Snake for just a brief moment before the game takes it away again and forces you to witness a dying guard proclaiming a ghost is responsible for the murder of his comrades. You are then once again given control of Snake, the game almost forcing you to steel yourself for what lies around the corner. When you're finally ready to continue forward, you are treated to one last glimpse of this enigmatic figure causing all of this death. his last victim suspended by the edge of his blade before he mercilessly cuts him down. Without so much as looking at the destruction he's caused behind him, he marches into the next room. This whole sequence is so short, yet it conveys what it needs to in that small amount of time. A lot of it comes down to the way the scene is presented. The quick edits jumping between dead soldiers, the sound effects used during those quick cuts, even the distinct music that sounds unlike any other piece of music found within Metal Gear Solid 1. Putting the onus of moving Snake after the initial cutscene on the player is also a brilliant move. If you want the game to proceed, and if you want to face the cause of all of this, you, the player, need to continue forward. It actually reminds me quite a bit of PT in that regard. I think a lot of it can also be attributed to the PS1's graphics. Games were nowhere near as lifelike as they are now, meaning a lot was left to imagination. The first time I played through MGS1, I had no idea what to expect. The game is pretty violent from the get-go, but this scene takes it to a whole new level. Imagining what I would encounter around that last corner and how the hell I was supposed to stop it was all I could think about as a kid. There's a reason I can replay this scene perfectly in my mind after all these years. This next one comes from the same vein, again no pun intended, as the Gray Fox hallway scene, and it's another cutscene I will never forget. The way Vamp gets introduced is via one of the bloodiest and most violent cutscenes not only in Metal Gear Solid 2, but throughout the entire franchise. It starts off very reminiscent of the bloody hallway. The player and Raiden are both treated to bloody, slumped over dead bodies, but unlike the bloody hallway scene, this time around we get a front row seat to the horror. We actually get to witness just how quickly, easily, and violently these soldiers are being disposed of by Vamp. You can actually see the terror in one of the soldiers' eyes as he sprays rounds into Vamp to absolutely no avail. What really amplifies how scary this scene ends up being is the fact that Vamp is able to get the drop on Snake, pick him up entirely with one arm, and throw him up against a wall like a ragdoll. To see this legendary soldier in such a helpless situation definitely left a lasting impact on me. Combined with the blood, the sounds of dying soldiers, Vamp seemingly sucking the blood out of someone, and his superhuman strength and speed, this entire scene is definitely up there as one of the scariest and most violent moments in all of Metal Gear history. Taking a break from the explicitly violent scary moments, we are now going to go over one of the most well-known cutscenes and lines of dialogue in the entire franchise. Due to Emma Emmerich's virus being uploaded to Arsenal Gear, the kernel AI starts going haywire. Things get weirder and weirder as you move through the Arsenal Gear interior. You eventually get spam called via your codec, with the AI warning you to shut off your console. This fourth wall breaking is what makes this whole portion of the game as scary as it is, not to mention the music and the almost surreal dark digital background of Arsenal Gear. Eventually, you get a call in which the Colonel insinuates being abducted by aliens. If all of that wasn't creepy enough for you, eventually the AI completely breaks down and starts spewing nonsense at you. While none of this may seem as scary as people being cut in half, experiencing this for the first time as a kid and not knowing what in the hell is happening was definitely terror-inducing. Metal Gear Solid 2 is already a difficult game to understand, requiring multiple playthroughs to even begin grasping what's going on. With that in mind, the fact that this entire section exists just to further screw with your mind is exactly the reason why it's placed so high on this list. Now for the scariest moment in all of Metal Gear. This one should be no surprise to anyone, as it was designed to be scary from its inception. The whole idea behind this fight is terrifying to someone like me who doesn't really believe in ghosts, but is definitely afraid of the general concept of them. Even more so in this specific situation, as the ghosts you encounter during this boss fight originate from the dead soldiers and bosses you have taken out up until this point. It makes it much more personal and gives this specific encounter with the paranormal that much more weight. I especially love the simple music and ambient noises going on throughout the entirety of the fight. They perfectly complement the dreary environment. Everything around Snake is dead, and all we can do is continue to march forward toward the sorrow. Technically, you don't need to make it to the end of the river. You can drown yourself or find another way to off yourself to end the fight, but you don't get the sorrow's camo or the full experience if you choose to do this. By far the scariest part to me personally are the ghost bolts the sorrow periodically throws out during the fight. If you get hit by one, you get a flash of the Sorrow's death. This is the closest thing to a jump scare that we have in Metal Gear, and I try and avoid being hit by these whenever I play through Snake Eater. The Sorrow is a creepy character, but he's also an extremely tragic character. I cannot imagine how tormenting it must have been to constantly have to hear the dead calling out to you. This boss fight is basically what he had to experience when he was alive. Luckily, it's not our time yet, so after touching an apparition of his body, Snake is momentarily taken out of commission, and we are treated to a little bit of the Sorrow's backstory. An interesting detail is that you are able to see the Sorrow's actual resting place very early on in the game. This encounter will always go down as one of the most memorable boss fights in all of Metal Gear to me. It's also one of the scariest portions of the game, and I truly believe if you showed someone who didn't know anything about Metal Gear this entire scene, they would probably think it's a horror game. I hope you all enjoyed going through my favorite scary moments in the Metal Gear series, and I really hope you leave your favorite scary moment in the comments below so I can read through them. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.